Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
The strike has accelerated two kinds of debate. Collectively, the GCC and Arab League are revisiting joint deterrence and even a so-called NATO-style Arab force, which has been longly dormant but now revived by the Doha summit as leader declared that Israel can no longer strike with impunity. Egyptian and Jordanian leaders urged concrete joint actions in this. And also for the first time in years, we saw Saudi and Iranian leadership sat together to discuss common security concerns, which is something relevant. It's a striking development in this sense.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Leaders of Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation States gathered in Doha for an emergency summit on Monday, a response to the Israeli strikes that hit a Hamas compound in the Qatari capital last week. The summit marked a strong display of solidarity with Qatar, with its fellow Arab Gulf countries, Iran, Egypt, and others calling for a, quote, review of ties with Israel and publicly backing Doha. The strikes, which killed several Hamas members but failed to eliminate Khalil al-Hayya and other senior leaders, could have major ramifications for the Gulf, U.S., and Israel amid shifting regional dynamics. Tensions between the UAE and Israel, the two foundational members of the Abraham Accords, increased with the incident. Iran sought to further its rapprochement with the Gulf at the summit, and on Tuesday, Security Chief Ali Larijani went to Saudi Arabia for talks. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled to Doha himself on Tuesday to reassure Qatari leaders of the Trump administration's support. In this episode, we hear from the author of the Al Monitor Gulf newsletter, Francesco Schiavi. Francesco takes us through the aftermath of the summit, including the potential revival of a pan-Arab defense force, the diminished status of U.S. security guarantees after the Israeli strikes, as well as the Iranian attack on Qatar in June, and why Gulf states are weighing ties with the U.S. and the Abraham Accords against regional solidarity. Hope you enjoy. Francesco, welcome to the Al Monitor Brief.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Francesco, how sincere do you think these Gulf displays of solidarity with Qatar are?
The solidarity expressed at the Doha Emergency Summit is both, I think, genuine and strategic. The Israeli strike on Doha, which killed 6 people, including a Qatari officer and the son of the Hamas deputy Khalil al-Hayya, was unprecedented. And it came just, let's say, months after Iranian missile struck Qatar in June. Until then, Iran had been the main threat. Now Israel is openly joining that list. This sense of shock explains why the atmosphere in Doha was so serious, with long and intense discussions among Arab League and other regional leaders. Qatar's emir called the bombing an attack not only on sovereignty, but on mediation itself, warning that those who work consistently to assassinate the party in the negotiations will certainly do everything to ensure the failure of these negotiations. So overall, all states attending extended their unwavering support to Qatar as a mediator. Even Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian sat next to Gulf leaders. We have Egypt President al-Sisi cautioned that Israel's action will undermine existing peace agreements, and Jordan's King Abdullah saying bluntly that the Israel threat knows no bounds. So there is sincerity in this rhetoric because all feel vulnerable, but also pragmatism that still limits action. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE must wage solidarity against the ties to Washington and the legacy also of the Abraham Accords, at least for Abu Dhabi.
And what changes do you think Gulf states might make in terms of their defense policy and posturing after the Israeli strikes in Doha and the accompanying summit?
The strike has accelerated two kinds of debate. Collectively, the GCC and Arab League are revisiting joint deterrence and even a so-called NATO-style Arab force, which has been longly dormant but now revived by the Doha summit as leader declared that Israel can no longer strike with impunity. Egyptian and Jordanian leaders urged concrete joint actions in this. And also, for the first time in years, we saw Saudi and Iranian leadership sat together to discuss common security concerns, which is something relevant. It's a striking development in this sense. Yet, we also have to consider that deep divisions remain. Some states that normalize with Israel under the Abraham Accords face heavier, let's say, exit costs if they escalate. And also nationally, Gulf states are already hardening layered air and missile defenses and rethinking critical infrastructure protection. This is something that was happening in the Gulf since the 2019 attacks on Saudi oil pipelines, were the first cracks in the US shield in this sense. Also, Iranian rocket missiles in June and Israel precision strikes in September have now made that fragility undeniable. So also satellite imagery of the damaged compound in Doha reinforce how vulnerable fixed assets remain, especially in that area of the planet. What we should expect are more investment in dispersal, decoys, and indigenous defense industries, plus hedging with other main defense providers such as Turkey, South Korea, the US, of course, European allies, but also China maybe. Overall, as some Gulf official put it privately with some media outlets, if America won't protect the Gulf must learn to protect itself.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Francesco Schiavi after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Francesco, you alluded to this earlier, but have the Israeli strikes, as well as the Iranian attack on El Udeid earlier this year, have those two things changed how the Gulf views the U.S. as a security partner?
I think that the short answer is yes. The US role as a sole guarantor has been discredited. Qatar built its strategy on being indispensable to Washington. It funds Al Udeid, hosts more than 10,000 US troops, and is the second largest purchaser of US foreign military sales worldwide per capita. That was supposed to mean immunity for Doha's perspective, but instead we have seen that in June, Iranian missiles struck its territory because of the US presence as part of the US intervention of the Israeli-Iranian 12 days war. That was supposed to mean immunity. Instead, in June, Iranian missiles struck its territory, and in September, Israel bombed Doha. So, and ironically, this happened just a day after accepting a US ceasefire plan. Some fresh reports stated that Trump was informed of the strike in a call with Netanyahu beforehand, though Washington later voiced concern. For Doha, this contradiction is also relevant. It suggests that the US is either unable, if not unwilling, to restrain its ally. Also, the Emir of Qatar warned that Israeli rhetoric about freeing hostages was a mere lie, given the assassination attempt on negotiations in Qatar. So overall, the losers are Qatar and the US. Doha's, let's say, Switzerland of the Middle East strategy is now at risk, and the US reputation as a shield has been punctured. Again, the US security umbrella began to fray in 2019, but now it has not collapsed, but is severely damaged in the eye, at least in the eye of the public eye. Probably here the result will be a portfolio approach. Doha will try to keeping the US anchor, but at the same time building redundancy through regional initiatives and Western partners.
And finally, how do you think other Gulf states, and I think we're particularly interested in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, how do you think they view the Hamas presence in Qatar after these strikes?
Saudi Arabia and the UAE have always been uneasy with Hamas leaders staying in Doha, considering it an obstacle to normalization and liability. They also acknowledged that Qatar's access was uniquely valuable for mediation, whether in hostage swaps or ceasefire talks. This is something that also happened thanks to Qatar's main role as a mediator also with Iran, for example. But after the Israeli strike, this calculus shifted. Netanyahu openly threatened Qatar to expel Hamas or we will attack again. Doha faced, in this case, a dilemma, expelling Hamas and thus undermining its mediator role or keeping them while risking more attacks. Qatar's mediator role has been emphasized as indispensable from leaders attending the summit. But at the same time, Saudi and Emirati officials may quietly prefer a narrower, more controlled mandate. They would like Hamas contained, not exported in their own political spaces. Also, Iran's presence at the summit complicates matters. Tehran sees Hamas as part of its regional axis, and its willingness to attend the summit alongside GCC monarchs show that everyone recognizes the symbolic weight of Qatar's role. Probably the likely outcome is a middle ground. Hamas remains in Doha under tighter control. Mediation continues, but with a different framework for Qatar, and also Riyadh and Abu Dhabi might leverage the crisis to push for constraints without assuming responsibility themselves.
Francesco, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your newsletters and reporting on these topics.
Thank you so much for having me. Great pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.